Okay, so let's dive right in. Barcelona against Inter, Arsenal versus PSG. Two massive Champions League semifinals.
Huge games. 4 giants.
But only two can make the final. And look, forget the usual pundit chat you hear everywhere. We're actually going to dig into some numbers today. The kind of nerdy stats that honestly might really matter.
Exactly. We're trying to give you that bit of an edge, Move beyond just gut feelings.
Yeah. What's the real story here?
So our mission in this deep dive basically is to break down the key statistical matchups, see what the data tells us about who might have the upper hand, statistically speaking.
Okay.
I'll look at Barca versus Inter first, naturally, and then turn to Arsenal against PSG.
And when we say numbers, we mean things like, well, expected goals, right? How many goals a team should score based on the chances.
Yep, that's fundamental. And also post-shot expected goals. So once the shot's on target, how likely is it really to go in? Tells you a lot about finishing or goalkeeping.
Right, and how teams even get those shots, shot-creating actions.
And goal-creating actions, the final pass or dribble before the shot, basically the whole chain.
Plus, you mentioned, there's something extra. A bit of a secret stat for the Barca game.
We've got one more, yeah. Something that could be, well, quite revealing for that specific tie. Could be a game changer in how we look at it.
Intriguing. Okay, let's get straight into it then. Barcelona versus Inter. What are we seeing there?
Well, first thing that jumps out with Barcelona is just the sheer volume of chances they create. Their shot-creating actions number is really high.
Yeah, typical Barca, dominating the ball, lots of intricate play around the box.
Exactly. It shows that attacking intent, that ability to, consistently work the ball into dangerous spots.
But then, Inter, they're not exactly easy to break down, are they?
Not at all. They are incredibly solid, very organized defensively, and what's really fascinating looking at the data is their post-shot expected goals against.
Okay, what does that tell us?
It suggests they're conceding fewer goals from shots that are on target than you'd statistically expect. So the keeper's playing out of his skin.
That's one strong possibility. A high-performing goalkeeper making big saves. Or it could also mean their defense is so well drilled, they're forcing attackers into taking shots that look dangerous, but are maybe easier for the keeper to handle. Predictable angles.
Okay, interesting. So the big question here is, can Barcelona's constant pressure and their ability to actually create those clear openings,
which we see reflected when you compare their actual goals scored to their expected goals.
Right. Can that finally break down this really stubborn Inter defense? Because Inter conceding fewer than expected, that's a tough nut to crack.
It really is. It sets up this classic narrative, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Potent attack versus a really, really solid defensive unit, maybe with a keeper on fire.
Definitely. Okay, let's shift focus then. Arsenal versus PSG. What's the story the numbers tell us there?
Well, with Arsenal, the data points towards something slightly different. Remarkable efficiency.
Efficiency. Meaning they're actually scoring more goals than their expected goals tally would predict. Considerably more, in fact.
So clinical finishing. When they get a chance, they bury it.
Pretty much. That positive difference between goals scored and expected goals, it really highlights that they've got a clinical edge right now. When they get a sniff as goal, it seems more likely to go in than the stats might usually suggest.
Okay. And PSG.
Yeah.
How do they compare?
PSG. It's almost the opposite story in some ways.
Yeah.
Their strength lies in creating a massive volume of chances.
Right.
Their numbers for shot-creating actions and goal-creating actions are really impressive. They're consistently getting the ball into attacking positions, making those key passes.
Right, and I feel there's a but coming.
There is a bit of a but, yeah. Because our analysis also shows they're kind of struggling with the final part, converting those chances. Their difference between goals scored and expected goals is actually negative. So despite creating all these opportunities...
Not putting them away as often as you'd think.
Exactly. It's like they're doing all the hard work to create the chance, but that final touch is just missing more often than not, based on the quality of chances.
And didn't Arsenal beat them recently? 2-0.
They did. And you could argue that result kind of fits this pattern, couldn't you? Arsenal perhaps taking their chances. PSG maybe creating, but not converting.
Yeah, makes sense.
So the central question for the semifinal feels like, will Arsenal's superior finishing, that clinical edge, be enough to overcome a PSG side that just generates opportunity after opportunity, even if PSG haven't been super efficient with those chances so far?
It's a fascinating contrast. Quality of finishing versus quantity of chances.
Absolutely. Efficiency versus volume, I guess.
Okay, so we've got expected goals, post-shot numbers, creating actions. But you mentioned that extra stat for Barcelona-Inter, the secret one.
Ah, yes. Let's circle back to that. We looked into something called progressive passing distance, specifically for Barcelona.
Progressive passing distance. What exactly is that measuring?
Basically, it measures how many yards a team moves the ball forward towards the opponent's goal with their completed passes. It's not just about keeping the ball sideways or backwards.
Okay, so it's about purposeful possession, moving up the pitch.
Precisely. And what's really interesting with Barcelona is just how high their number is for this. It tells us they're incredibly effective at advancing the ball up the field and into those more threatening areas.
So it's not just sterile possession, they actually get it
Yeah,
forward.
exactly. It likely reflects, midfielders breaking lines with passes, forwards making runs to receive the ball in advanced positions. They make significant ground consistently.
So could this be the key then, against that tight interdefense? If Barca can consistently progress the ball deep into Inter's territory.
That's the crucial question it raises, isn't it? If they can repeatedly move the ball effectively into those dangerous zones, maybe even Inter's fantastic organization and goalkeeping can be overwhelmed eventually.
Yeah, it puts a different spin on it. It's not just if they can create shots, but how they get into positions to create those shots in the first place. This progressive passing thing. It could genuinely be a deciding factor.
I think so. It suggests Barcelona's threat isn't just about the final shot volume, it's about their underlying mechanism for penetrating defenses, potentially leading to higher quality chances closer to goal.
Okay, wow. That adds another layer entirely. So we've thrown a lot of stats out there. Expected goals, post-shot values, chance creation, and now this progressive passing distance for Barca.
Yeah, trying to piece it all together. So for Barcelona versus Inter, it really does look like this massive tactical fight. Can Barca's attack, powered by that ability to move the ball forward so well?
Can that break down Inter's super solid defensive structure and that keeper who seems to be saving everything right now?
That's the crux of it. And then for Arsenal against PSG.
It's Arsenal's deadly finishing versus PSG just creating chance after chance, but maybe not taking them.
Exactly. And that previous 2-0 Arsenal win just hangs there, adding a bit more weight to that narrative, perhaps.
Yeah.
But, it's crucial to remember, while these stats give us really strong clues about strengths, weaknesses, where the key battles might be.
It's still football.
Yeah.
Anything can happen on the day.
Absolutely. Unpredictable. Will Barcelona's passing unlock Inter? Will Arsenal keep finishing like this against a team creating so much? These stats help us frame the right questions, I think.
Definitely. So, quick summary then. Barca-Inter, it's attack and progression versus defensive solidity. Arsenal-PSG, it's clinical finishing versus chance volume.
That's a neat way to put it. And look, now you, the listener, have this data too. You've heard our breakdown. Think about these trends, these matchups. Based on these numbers, who do you think has the edge?
Yeah, who looks stronger statistically going into these massive games?
It leads to that final thought, really. Which of these statistical stories feels most likely to hold true under the immense pressure cooker of a Champions League semifinal?
Is it going to be Barca slicing through defenses? Inter's keeper becoming a wall? Arsenal's ruthless streak? Or will PSG finally find their shooting boots when it matters most?
Which trend do you trust? That's something to really mull over. Which stat profile is built for semifinal success?
Definitely food for thought. Leave a comment if you enjoyed this soccer talk and subscribe to the AI GOAT podcast for more epic soccer deep dives. Thanks for tuning in.